Welcome to the Rebuild Procurement podcast, where we dive deep into topics to keep procurement people up to date and ahead of their peers. Subscribe on YouTube, whether or not you like this. On today's episode, we have a new president, Alan. I don't know if you saw, but that president has executive orders, as they do. We're going to touch on the more procurement-related ones. Then we'll have a nice transition into the return to office, what the Fed government's looking to do, as well as possibly your execs. And last year, Netflix is increasing pricing. Talk about how that could be used as a proxy for some of your suppliers. I'm Tom Finn, bringing 15 years on the client side, procurement, finance, and category management experience in large and small cap orgs.
And I'm Alan Veek, a procurement geek on the sell side of the street. And I've assembled a team of superhuman procurement professionals doing managed services at a little company we call Summit.
So how you doing, though, Alan? Before we hop in and entertain more, how's things going with you?
Well, let's see. I think you and I are in opposite hemispheres. Is that right?
We are. I'm sweating right now. I'm drinking coffee, and I probably don't need to because it's already hot.
To most of our listeners, unless they're in Southern California or Florida, they are not going to know what in the world you're talking about. Because here,
even if you're in Texas right now, it's true. Yeah, it's snowed in Houston.
It is crazy. Yeah, here it is. We saw minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit last night. So it was the lowest it's been in a long time. But we've had a spell of under 32 degrees for, I'd say, the better part of 10 days. It looks like it's going to stay cold for a while.
Yeah. I am hanging out in 90-plus degree weather because opposite hemisphere means opposite season. So it is summer where I'm at. Yeah. But we're still so committed to this podcast. It is vacation, but brought my equipment here as much as I could fit in my bag, and that my wife would let me carry. And now we're here. So, but as such, things are happening within the U.S., specifically new president. So the president of the United States now, Donald Trump. And with that, he has some executive orders. And before we get to what executive orders he signed, I started going a little deep on this, Alan. I think just like all statistics that we look up, there's like multiple variations of it. so let's not get too tied down into who does what. But do you know, at least since 1937, who had the most executive orders over their tenure?
Yeah,
or even call it on a yearly basis if you want.
You would think, based upon the hype, that Trump has got to be in the running, but it's too early, right? Too early to tell.
Yeah,
he had a very busy first couple of days, but I would. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't even venture a guess.
Yeah, it was kind of, when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. FDR was the guy, so he had over 3,000. Granted, he had essentially like 3 terms, right? But he was going at like 1,000 a year executive orders. And
1,000 a term.
1,000 a term. Sorry, 1,000 a term. 1,000 a term. So 1,000 every 4.
Because I think everybody else is like a couple hundred, right?
Yeah, everyone else hangs out around like a quarter of that for a term. So
that's big. But tumultuous times. Yeah, that was
for sure. Yeah, and government he was tumultuous, and then I guess maybe he just had to push his own things through at the time, which is maybe there wasn't his pushback. There wasn't the Twitters of the world to push back as much. But yeah, so Trump, he signed a few executive orders on day one, as all presidents do. They make commitments during their campaigns, and then they say, on day one, I'm going to deliver this, that, and the other thing. So he made his own attempt. For you and I, we're going to hang out of the lightning rod space, I think, for the most part, and talk about what could be water cooler talk that is safe for work when it comes to executive orders, and the first and applicable, right? And the first is trade that we have here, Alan. So I'll kind of tee it up and then we'll chat about it. So on the tariffs, I don't think he made actually any he made the executive order was more around like investigation and understanding trade deficits, but it seems he announced, and this is there's a few different sources. Politico is pretty down the middle. He had said they're looking to impose 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada starting Feb 1, which is a week from the day that we're talking here. He said he was going to do it day 1, which would have been the 20th. So he's saying on Feb 1 now, 25% tariffs, and then an external revenue service aiming to collect tariffs and other revenues.
That's still definitely huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's, even a week, quote unquote, a week late. That's huge.
Yeah.
Or as he would say, huge.
I don't know if I say that. People I know say that.
People I know say that. Yes. So but I would say it's quite interesting. I mean, we know that he's a negotiator. We know that he's written the book on negotiation. Is this just the next negotiation where he basically says, he scares everybody, day 1, we're going to hit you with this? And we saw when he announced it during his campaign that who freaked out? Canada and Mexico freaked out immediately, and kind of had to try to get out in front of it and try and make sure that they were protecting themselves, their countries, their economies. But I think maybe this 7-day delay gives everybody a chance to negotiate a bit. And I think he also, even though the Politico article did not mention it, I think he also said he wanted to renegotiate the what was NAFTA.
Yeah, I also
what
remember
was
the
renamed.
New name. Because it was just done 4 years ago.
4 years ago. He says he wants to renegotiate that early, so he could try to wrap that all in and kind of get this done in the first week, which is pretty impressive. And I kind of, he jokingly says his new favorite word is tariff, which is hilarious. It is a very interesting negotiation tool to use with all these countries. So it definitely felt like during his inaugural address, he was pushing hard on the button of, we are going to use the power that we have economically to get better, favorable trade agreements with the rest of the world.
Yeah, and maybe it's 2, maybe 3, but just as we talk about negotiation, which a lot of important pieces are like, where's your starting position, right? You got to know like the whole BATNA type stuff. I don't know if he cares so much about that whole BATNA, right? But he's like, where am I starting? Let's make it extreme, so that when I back off, it's still fantastic and way better than anybody else thought. So there's that one piece of what's the initial position, and then another piece is that timeline, right? 1 week for countries to do things together, super tight. But if he feels and kind of is the one that is the one with that stopwatch, then if it goes 1 more week, it's, guys, 1 more week, but expectations are now this, and that, as they have the bit behind the behind the door conversations. Timing is also another one. So to the extent whoever has more time generally wins, or can slow play things. If you don't have time, you lose a lot of position too.
Yeah, that is for sure. I wonder realistically how long it takes to implement this. Is it literally press a key on the computer keyboard and all of a sudden,
I feel like it's
everything coming in through the country,
it was like the DOS, right? The like a blinking green dot.
That's right. Yes.
For like federal governments to work together.
Yeah.
Just 25% sign, or probably 0.25.
Yeah. Do they pay at the border? How does that all work? I mean, there's a whole bunch of inside baseball stuff that'd be fun to know here.
Yeah, generally, I would assume it probably is going to take like a year to make it kind of happen, or at least 6 months. But you need it in writing now to then work through the how-to. But there's reasons, and how does it affect folks and importation? Like a lot of stuff is made at essentially and imported at zero tax between that free flow of Canada and Mexico. I know things have changed a bit, but that's kind of just the idea of what NAFTA was. So if you start putting 25% as it comes in, that raises prices 25% as you're checking out at Target, Walmart, whatever, maybe Amazon, if it's coming from those countries. So that's
in theory, and then in theory, American goods and services become more price competitive relative to international. Which is fascinating.
And then, but the avocados, will just be 25% more expensive.
Yeah, California makes avocados, or at least they used to. Maybe that helps revitalize that industry. I know that a lot of the commentary was that this is largely to benefit American auto workers who are currently being outcompeted by low-cost labor in Mexico, by and large.
Interesting. and Canada. There's a lot of parts in Canada. During that workers' strike, the truckers' strike, auto industry was the one because they're right across the bridge, right? So it's kind of proximity is very close. So I think they had 70% the cost of labor, generally speaking, Canada to US. Okay, so that was one that we had, big impact. And then kind of the offsetting piece. This one may be a bit of a lightning rod for folks, but we're going to speak it from an economic standpoint, is the being able to, so less regulations and then the ability to drill for oil. You know, we still call it drill, but however, extract oil in the United States. You know, Trump gets a little bombastic about it with whole drill, baby drill. But this is, like you and I have talked down, there's a bit of an offsetting factor to the inflation to the extent that goods are going up. The U.S. has a lot of natural resources. And if those natural resources become less expensive because oil is a global commodity, that can kind of offset some of that increase and some of that inflation.
Yeah, that's right. And this actually is interesting because this benefits our home state, Pennsylvania, quite dramatically. Even Philadelphia stands to benefit from this, less so from the natural gas that might be sitting under your feet. But I know that Philly as a port is a big LNG, liquid natural gas export.
Yeah, Marcus Hook is what was the refinery, now is an export site.
That's right. So, you know, that's huge, especially with the ongoing trouble in Ukraine with Russia and the tension between Europe and Russia. Yeah, I think this really stands to benefit a lot of Pennsylvania. Again, another campaign promise. And I think it just makes a lot of sense. It will continue to push on the competitiveness of the American economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ability to lower cost of natural resources, because oil is just in kind of everything. Like the shirt I'm wearing, a lot of the apparel now is like oil based, right? Like polyesters and things like are chemical, maybe not specifically polyester, but like those type things, they end up being oil based. And just the ability to bring down those basic costs just makes things in general less expensive that are manufactured in the U.S. So yeah, an offsetting factor to that inflation.
Yeah, that's great.
A lever to pull,
Okay,
let's call it.
So we covered trade, we covered energy. The third one's the most interesting, I think.
All right. Federal workforce. So
Yeah.
Trump is, one of his executive orders signed was to bring folks back to work. I couldn't find it, Alan. You said you saw that it was 5 days a week, right?
Yeah, I saw that there was a CBS News report that confirmed that it was 5 days a week. So it's full return back to work as if pre-COVID, pre-2020.
Yeah, unbelievable. Because a lot of folks are still working from home.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem big, right? This is we heard that this was one of the levers that Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, might pull this lever as a forcing mechanism to see, okay, who really wants to come back. And they pulled it all the way, 5 days a week. That's huge.
Yeah, that's Elon did that. He did that at his manufacturing sites. I think famously did this and more at Twitter, now X, and it's a function for reducing number of employees, right? Without saying without actually laying folks off.
Soft riff. Yep.
I'm taking away a perk. That perk, if it's important to you, then you're going to find something else to do, essentially, right? Kind of like a reduction in bonuses. Like people get ticked off about bonuses, can't pay them out. Okay, I'm leaving. Okay, less money for me to spend. So this should. We'll see how this plays out, but feels like something he could actually do with an executive order.
Yeah.
So
they've talked about the cost of living crisis. They've talked about a federal hiring freeze, and they've talked about curtailing the issuing of new regulations. So that all fits under kind of this big heading of what's happening with the federal workforce, the return to work policies. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. I think that's where we're going to stop with the executive orders right now, Alan. All right. I think there's sure there's plenty more to come. These happen throughout terms. He's 2-3 days in at this point, so I'm sure there'll be more. But I think it's just important for folks to understand this is top of mind for a lot of industries right now. What is the president of the United States going to do? China is probably one that's going to be up next. I think there was like the whole TikTok ban, and he pushed that out. There was also I think the vice prime minister of China was at his inauguration. I'm sure they chatted, as well as the CEO of TikTok. So that means there's more to come on China and the relations there. Again, big manufacturing partner. So I think that'll probably be one that we'll be covering in the weeks to come. But on RTO, maybe we'll transition to private industry now. I
like
saw, Alan, it was, I think it was from like a week ago, that execs within private industry looking to do, maybe not even, maybe they'll turn it to 5 days, but it was 75% of execs going to 3 days per week in 2025. This is, I found this one, I think, via AOL. so we'll see how relevant it is. But it was a survey of like 900 just public companies that or 900 companies that execs that were looking to bring their folks back to work. Yeah, should be. I'm curious though, with Trump going 5 days, what private's going to do.
Yeah, I like I like that. It's even 3 days a week feels like it's going to be tough for a lot of people. I'll gauge it locally just by what does the traffic look like on the road. I still go in 5 days a week to this office because it's a nice place to kind of get work done, and I'm old school like that. But interestingly, inside our business, so I'm one of those CEOs, but I'm not in the 75%. I'm in the 25%. We obviously, we're a distributed workforce, and when we founded Summit in 2023, we were still kind of in the midst of that, figuring out the hybrid, figuring out the total days to be in the office. So while I have an office here and I have a teammate of mine in the office today, very typically I won't have anyone in the office. It's just me. Most crowded it's been is we've had 4 people in the office, but we're a remote first. We kind of label ourselves as a remote first business. So I won't be in that 75%. We're in the 25% that doesn't have any sort of stricture on that. We do, however, have a lot of what I'd call ways that we try to mitigate the fact that we're remote first. So just last week, I think we referenced it on last week's podcast, we had the entire team, which amounts to about 30 people, come into Pittsburgh, and we did what we call work together days, WTD, work together days, where we all just get together and try and plan a nice mix of work during the day, but in the evenings have some social events. We went and saw a hockey game, we ate out, we did a little karaoke, all kinds of crazy stuff. Had some fun, and we do that twice a year. That really seems to be something that everybody enjoys doing, and I like to see the camaraderie that happens during that. So we have a bunch of ways that we try to offset the fact that we're remote first. This is going to be a big deal, though. If companies go back, if 75% of the workforce goes back 3 days a week, that's a move kind of back towards where we were pre-2020.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't like to be the first ones that force their employees to do things, but have no problem going on the coattails of others, right? So the coattails of others. So I think, yeah, we'll probably see more once folks start seeing 75%, 3 days, and it's okay. That'll be 80, yeah. And then 83.
Right. I think that's right, and I in general I do think it's a great thing. I know that the mentorship that happened when I was coming up through the ranks in the 90s and the early 2000s, that's just invaluable for starting your career. So I do worry about, much like we worried about what COVID did to school age kids who missed a couple of years of their formative school time, with their kind of the sociability with their cohort. I think same sort of thing happens for young professionals. I think the Gen Z is going to be particularly hard hit, because a lot of the things that you can only learn when you're face to face in an office, when you have the ability to just kind of, like you said, water cooler talk, or pull someone aside and ask them a quick question, or watch how people work. Those sorts of things, you don't realize how much they mean until you don't have them.
FaceTime of just like, you're walking by, whatever. If you're a large company, you kind of see whatever different execs in the elevator. You just go to happy hours, like where you actually get to know people. I think a lot of that was also lost. Where like those mentors, then you start talking about work and you learn stuff from them. Then you talk about life on the outside, figure out if that's a good career trajectory for you or not. There's a lot of things that just like happen just by being around people in real life. Yep. I also find anywhere like 2 to 4 times a year has been pretty great for meeting people. But if I was still stuck at home and not seeing people, I'm fortunate.
Terrible.
There's a decent number of folks that I have relatively close, within 2 hours that I just go to the office sometimes. But now there is a lot of remotely distributed team members that say you're based in New York, but then you got a bunch of folks down, like some folks in Texas, but it's not all in Houston. It's Houston, Austin, and Dallas. It starts getting tough. And I'm curious how that will play out. But
Well, we'll
yeah,
see.
we'll see. They may leave the company, but there's only going to be so many remote jobs on a go forward, I think is what this is saying. For new hiring, you should probably expect, if you're going to switch roles, you probably be going to the office 2 to 3 days. So now it'll be a true perk if you're fully remote. So yeah, so I think, but that'll be an interesting, interesting to watch probably over the next year to 3 to see where all of that plays out. Speaking of playing and pressing the play button, Netflix is increasing their pricing. Try my best on that transition, Alan.
Good, I like it. Smooth.
Yeah. So Netflix is increasing their pricing. They're going from they've done this over the year. About every 2 years, they do some sort of like revamp or increase. And now, if you're paying for your standard, I think it's standard with like 2 accesses at the same time, HD, you're going to be going from 1550 to 18. And then if you're high def, whatever, unlimited, all that kind of stuff, you're going from 23 to 25. But I was curious as I saw that announcement, as I was looking through the different topics that we had to choose from, Alan, the using that as a proxy for just like the comparables, right? So I went through. Let me share my screen for those on YouTube. You can go to our page. Let me share here. It's not the prettiest thing, but I'm going to share it anyway, Alan.
Yeah, it's good data.
Yeah, to lay this out, like on the left-hand side, we have our dates. So the intro of Netflix was 2010. That was when, I think you probably only had the ability to log on one at a time anyway. And then there were a lot less shows. And then 2014, things started picking up. It was $8 for a while. And then that basic plan turned into a, relatively not as good plan. And that's when they rolled out standard. So, but I was thinking through this. I was like, all right, well, I wonder how much they're increasing every year versus others, because it's tough to say like Facebook, because it's so much of a, for these like FANG type companies like Facebook, Apple, Alphabet, Netflix. What's the G, Alan? It's not Google, right? I think Alphabet was the one, but those type companies. Do you remember?
Yeah. Come back to me on that.
All right. So either way, these companies, they're kind of tech companies. Like the Mag 7 is a different one. I think that switches some out for like NVIDIA. Either way, these like top end, top tier tech companies, you can only rate a few of them. And I think the pricing for Netflix is one that's usable. So they're a consumer facing product. And then nevertheless, the Salesforces of the world, these other companies that are large softwares, they're going to be looking also at like the Netflix and how much of the gross margin are they increasing versus their investment. So what I found, and what I just from looking at their prior increases, and again, things change because their product mix and what their offerings has changed. But about every year to 2, I call it about every year, they're increasing from like 5 to 8% is what it looks like. As I was going back, because right in like from 2017 to 2019. That standard plan, and it feels small, went from $11 to $13, but that's an 18% increase, right? 18.2% increase. And they do that about every year to 2. They have an increase that on average seems to increase above inflation, which I found interesting.
It's interesting to me that you find that interesting. I mean, I think a little bit of the reason why that is because they're dealing in dollar increments. So I think their ability to do this as they get higher valued out, you can't increase 99 cents. 99 cents on $9.99 is going to always be above inflation. It's going to be a 10% increase. But it's interesting. I find it interesting that you find it interesting. I think in my mind, the way pricing tends to work, this is a little bit of the inverse of Elon Musk's engineering principle, right? You take out 90% of over engineering, And if as long as you make sure you've broken the thing, then you add 10% back in. I think it's the same way. I think they increase the price more than they would care to, or more than they feel they can, and then they gauge the reaction. And if the reaction is, hey, user numbers just continue to climb, then we're in fine shape. Next time we need to do it a little bit more. And that's what this trend looks like to me.
No, I agree. It's not shocking. I just anytime that something outpaces inflation from a cost perspective, I do find it interesting. And then you say, all right, why do they have the ability to do that? Because it's great they can increase their pricing. Like, and also they build in future uncertainty too, right? They might have a more valuable product, but the uncertainty of the future is kind of, they get to increase their price now. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 years? I agree. We don't want to necessarily, maybe we want to hold it longer if we can, if we have the ability to build it in now, or maybe we want to we assume there's going to be more inflation, therefore we have to increase it by 16% over the course of 2 years, which will be that $15.50 to $18. Yeah, I don't know. Every time, as I always measure things, as I'm looking at different contracts, and again, this is customer facing, but I do tend to. It's just the value add, right? That if they get to increase more than is expected, that's just something a little extra. I do. Yeah. Interesting is the right word for me. I can't go with any other one. Like, I want to dig more. I want to dig more of like what they're doing. But the reason that they did say, just to plus one on your point there, Alan, that their user numbers are like, they're up, right? They had that Tyson Jake Paul fight. And then I think they signed some, I don't know if it was Monday Night Football, but they signed some football. They got the WWE, the wrestling, what's WWF, not WWE. They have that Monday night now. So they're kind of going into a different realm. They're also probably paying more for content. But I think those user numbers was what allows them to say, like, all right, we're fine if people drop. We're freaking knocking it out of the park right now.
Yeah, it is the opposite of what you tend to expect kind of from Moore's Law technology trend, right? You get more, you pay less. Most tech tends to be deflationary. So this is entertainment. This is inflationary. It's just inflationary. It gives me a second to riff on something that I love to talk about. When I started my career at McKinsey, we talked through a lot of the basics of how companies' balance sheets work. And so I'll offer you the quiz question.
Okay.
The second largest improvement lever, if you're the CEO of a business and you're the monarch of the business, you have the ability to dictate everything inside the business. The number 2 lever that you could pull to improve bottom line performance, like improve earnings per share of your business, is actually what we do. It's procurement. Good procurement. If you cut costs, if you have the ability to drive performance across your spend, that's the number 2 EPS, earnings per share improvement lever in the business. What's the number 1 lever you can pull, Tom?
Pricing.
Yes.
I don't know if I should bro you there or not, Alan, but I feel like I had to answer it. Give me the bro answer of, I don't know.
I don't know.
RTO mandates.
Yeah. So you think about this, when Netflix does the equivalent of the green DOS button and changes price Jan 1 or Feb 1 or whenever they're going to do it, all of that cash flows right to the bottom line. There's the only way it doesn't flow to the bottom line is if somebody says, yeah, that's too expensive for me, I'm out, and they cancel their subscription. Otherwise, it's all accretive.
Yeah. And for them, it's a simple model. I mean, the back end, the cost structure, probably super difficult, but it is at the end, the revenues is majority is number of subscribers times, those 3 tiers. There's some advertising product now, but I think that's a smaller amount. But it's that 1550 times number of subscribers at 1550. Like it's pretty simplistic. But yeah, this is I think we thought of that one as a proxy, right? Just how you can compare and again make you smarter than your peers.
Good. Yeah, another thing that we could talk about just for a second about making you smarter than your peers are these terms elasticity and inelasticity. So in talking about pricing like this, if Netflix were to see a 50% decrease in their user base based upon this price increase, we would say that the user base is price inelastic. In other words, they react pretty radically, non-elastically to price increases, and they're sensitive to it. Whereas I think in your case, in my case, you're a Netflix subscriber, right, Tom?
Yeah, yep.
So am I. I'm a pretty elastic pricing sort of guy. I'm not even going to notice this. It's just going to hit the credit card. It's going to be one more thing that inflates in my life, but not to the point where it breaks me. So both you and I are pretty elastic users. They watch this like hawks inside Netflix, and the rest of the industry will watch this to try to understand, okay, what does an X% increase do to the Y size of the user base? And it's interesting. It also could be, this is a very good way you use pricing to govern demand. So it could be that their user growth is so high that it's causing internal operational issues for them. And this might be the way that they kind of can get more revenue, but tune down that operational stress that could be happening.
Yeah.
We do that inside my business. We've got 30 people on my team. I wouldn't mind being 300 people, but you can imagine growing from 30 people to 300 people in a service business is tough to do. You have to have a set of systems in place and processes in place. And so we don't necessarily want to grow that fast. The easiest way to not grow that fast is you don't want to turn off the sales machine, but what you can do is you can turn up the pricing.
Yeah.
And then that pricing, in theory, should reduce demand a bit, and you'll grow a little bit more regularly and sustainably.
Yeah. Inelastic's when it doesn't change, right? That's the one that where when the price goes up, it doesn't matter. I think oil,
I
right?
Well, okay, that's a good one. I hope I didn't screw that one up. I thought elastic meant you could bend, you could give.
Yeah, which
Like,
also, it kind of makes sense. I think I'm going back to college accounting or college economics. The inelastic goods, it was just always oil. This is the one that kind of like landed with me. Like if you have to drive to work and it takes you a gallon of gas to drive to work, and that gallon, if it's $1, you're going to pay the dollar. If it's $3.50, you're going to pay $3.50, and kind of shrug your shoulders. But it is true. Whichever way it is, I remember, I think like 5 years ago, maybe it was 10. I don't know. Age passes quickly at some point. But they had a big pushback because they waited too long to increase their pricing, and everyone gets super comfortable. That's also why you'll see in like, it's not the same topic, but like benefits internal to companies and things like that. They kind of have to increase their share and amount that they pay internally, even if the company wants to cover you, just because like employees get comfortable with not paying more. You kind of always have to build that muscle of like, all right, it'll go up a little bit, it'll go up a little bit, it'll go up a little bit. Like, it's okay. As opposed to like, let me help you out. Because then that big jump, everyone was like, gives double middle fingers,
That's exactly right.
So, but that's a great topic. And it matters a lot for the consumer side of things for certain.
Yeah, for sure it does. All right. What do you say? Is that a wrap, Tommy?
I think that's a wrap, Alan.
All righty. On behalf of your humble hosts here at Rebuild Procurement Podcast, we are Thomas Finn, as he's known in the Witness Protection Program, and me, your pontiff of procurement, Alan Veek, hoping you will make this a productive week in procurement. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on the Rebuild Procurement Podcast. Like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest procurement content.
Show me, and you won't hear the word rebuild.